The story of Mexico begins in the distant past when the first humans crossed into the Americas and settled upon these vast lands of mountains and deserts, forests and valleys. Thousands of years ago, small groups of hunter-gatherers wandered across what would one day become Mexico, hunting ancient beasts and living beneath the open sky. Among their traces, the remains of the man of Texpan lay beneath the soil of what is now Mexico City, buried beside the bones of mammoths long vanished from the earth. For generations, these early people lived as nomads until the power of the seed changed everything. From wild grass, they learned to grow maize, the golden grain that would nourish their bodies and their civilizations. The birth of farming gave rise to villages, and soon to the first societies. Maize became more than food. It became the heartbeat of a new world. Alongside it grew beans, squash, tomatoes, and cacao, the source of a sacred bitter drink once reserved for the great. From these beginnings emerged the Olmecs, who rose upon the humid coasts of Veracruz and Tabasco more than 3,000 years ago. They carved colossal heads from stone, each face immortalizing their rulers. They built the first great temples and cities and gave to future generations the foundations of art, religion, and language. They played the first ball games that echoed across stone courts where victory and death sometimes walked hand in hand. The Olmecs vanished into history, yet their spirit lived on in every culture that came after. New peoples rose from the valleys and mountains of Mexico. The Zapotecs built Monte Alban high above the plains and filled it with temples and tombs. Then came the builders of Teotihuacan, whose city stood like a dream in the Valley of Mexico. No city before or since would match its mystery. Its broad avenues stretched for miles, and its pyramids touched the clouds. The Pyramid of the Sun, the Zai, Pyramid of the Moon, and the Temple of the Feathered Serpent towered above 100,000 souls who worshipped gods of rain and wind and life itself. Teotihuacan became a beacon of trade and faith, connecting peoples from distant lands. Its artisans worked obsidian sharper than any metal blade. Its merchants carried goods as far as the deserts of the north. But all empires rise and fall. Fire consumed its temples and its rulers vanished into legend, leaving only stone and silence behind. As Teotihuacan faded, the Maya rose in the jungles of the Yucatan and Guatemala. They built kingdoms of stone that pierced the green canopy. They charted the stars and carved time into their sacred calendar. Cities like Tikal and Calakmul flourished with kings who recorded their deeds upon stelae that still stand today. The Maya watched the heavens and counted the days with precision beyond their age. Yet even their cities, too, would fall silent as drought and war tore apart their world. Still, the Maya endured as a people, their languages and customs surviving to this day. After centuries of change, a new power arose in the highlands of central Mexico. The Toltecs of Tula appeared like ghosts from the ruins of the past. Warriors, artists, and builders, they shaped towering statues that watched over their city with cold stone eyes. To later generations, they became legends. Their memory was so powerful that when the Aztecs arrived centuries later, they claimed descent from them to justify their rule. The Aztecs came from the north, led by visions of their god Huitzilopochtli, who promised them a homeland marked by an eagle devouring a serpent upon a cactus. When they reached the shores of Lake Texcoco, they saw the sign, and there they built their city Tenochtitlan, a city of shimmering canals and floating gardens that seemed to rise from the waters like a mirage. The Aztecs grew from wanderers to conquerors. Through battle and alliance, they created a vast empire ruled from Tenochtitlan by emperors called Huitlatawani, the Great Speaker. They built pyramids to the sun and offered human hearts to keep the heavens in balance. The drums of sacrifice echoed across their temples, and the people believed that without the gift of blood, the world would fall into darkness. By the time the Spaniards arrived in 1519, the Aztecs ruled hundreds of cities and millions of people. Yet within 2 years, their empire would be gone. Hernán Cortés and his small band of conquistadors marched inland from Veracruz, drawn by rumors of gold and glory. They came upon a world unlike anything they had imagined. Some native cities welcomed them, hoping to overthrow Aztec rule. Others resisted and were crushed. Cortés formed alliances with the enemies of Tenochtitlan and used their armies to wage war against their former masters. When the Spaniards reached the capital, they were welcomed by Emperor Moctezuma, who believed these strange visitors might be envoys of the gods. Cortés repaid his hospitality with treachery, taking Moctezuma hostage and demanding tribute. The uneasy peace shattered when Spanish soldiers massacred worshippers during a sacred festival. The city erupted in fury. Moctezuma died amid chaos, and the Spaniards fled under the cover of night, their retreat known as the Night of Sorrows. Yet the conquest did not end there. The following year, Cortés returned with thousands of native allies and besieged Tenochtitlan for months. Disease, starvation, and relentless attack broke the defenders. In August of 1521, the city fell, the temples were torn down, the canals filled, and the old gods silenced forever. The age of the Aztecs ended, and the age of New Spain began. Upon the ruins of Tenochtitlan rose Mexico City, the heart of Spanish power in the Americas. The conquerors built cathedrals where pyramids once stood and filled in the lake to make way for their streets. Across the land, cities were remade in the Spanish image. Missionaries arrived by the hundreds to spread Christianity and erase the ancient faiths. Temples were burned, idols smashed, and sacred books destroyed. Yet beneath this new faith, the old beliefs lingered disguised within Christian symbols and festivals. The people of Mexico changed as worlds collided. Spanish settlers, African slaves, and the surviving native peoples mingled to create a new society. The bloodlines mixed, forming the mestizo people who became the living heart of Mexico. But beneath this blending lay deep inequality. Spanish-born nobles ruled over Creoles born in the colonies, who in turn ruled over natives and Africans. Wealth flowed to Spain while millions labored under harsh systems like the encomienda, where natives were forced to work for their masters in mines and fields. The silver mines of Zacatecas and Guanajuato glittered with the riches of the earth, but they came at a terrible cost. Disease and exhaustion swept through the native population, which plummeted from tens of millions to barely a fraction within a century. Still, the colony endured, growing richer and more complex. The church built grand monasteries and schools, while merchants filled the markets of Mexico City with goods from across the empire. By the 18th century, the seeds of rebellion began to grow. The Creoles, who were born in Mexico but denied equal power, resented their Spanish overlords. Enlightenment ideas from Europe whispered of liberty and self-rule. Across the oceans, revolutions erupted, and Mexico too began to stir. In 1810, a priest named Miguel Hidalgo rang the church bell in the town of Dolores and called upon his people to rise. His cry for independence echoed through the mountains. Thousands of peasants and townsfolk joined him, waving the banner of the Virgin of Guadalupe as their symbol of unity and faith. Though Hidalgo's uprising was crushed, his call ignited a fire that could not be extinguished. New leaders took up the cause. José María Morelos carried the revolution forward, declaring the equality of all races and the end of Spanish tyranny. He too was captured and executed, but his dream lived on. After more than a decade of blood and chaos, the war for independence finally triumphed in 1821. Spain's rule was broken, and Mexico stood as a new nation. But freedom came with turmoil. The young republic was torn by conflict between conservatives and liberals, between monarchists and republicans. The struggle for identity consumed the new nation. Then came war from the north. In 1846, Mexico clashed with the expanding power of the United States. Outnumbered and outgunned Mexican armies fought bravely but could not prevail. The war ended with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and Mexico lost half of its territory from California to Texas. Despite this loss, Mexico endured. Its spirit refused to die. The people rebuilt their country from ruin again and again. Foreign powers invaded once more when France placed Emperor Maximilian upon the throne, but the Mexicans rose under Benito Juárez to reclaim their land and their dignity. The empire fell, and a republic was reborn. Through the late 19th century, Mexico modernized under the long rule of Porfirio Diaz. Railways crossed the mountains, factories rose, and cities gleamed with new wealth. Yet beneath this progress, inequality deepened, and the poor remained voiceless. In 1910, the people once again rose in revolution. From the north came Pancho Villa, from the south Emiliano Zapata, both fighting for land and justice. The Mexican Revolution consumed the nation for a decade, leaving millions dead, but from its ashes came a new constitution that promised rights for workers and peasants alike. The 20th century tested Mexico again and again, but it also forged a nation with a unique soul. The murals of Rivera, Orozco, and Siqueiros painted the struggles of the people upon the walls of history. The music, the art, the language all blended to form a culture that was unmistakably Mexican, rooted in both its ancient past and its modern hopes. Today, Mexico stands as the heir to 1,000 years of triumph and tragedy. From the stone heads of the Olmecs to the pyramids,